All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going through a series where I've created an HTML sandbox, and from there I've kind of created this, I don't know if you call it a website, but it's a web page, okay, where I've been able to explain a lot of the things in here. Now, in tomorrow's lectures, so today we talked about HTML, and HTML allows you to add content to a web page. Tomorrow, we will talk about CSS, cascading style sheets. And with cascading style sheets, what you're able to do is style the HTML. All right. So we're going to look at that tomorrow. But before we do, there's a couple kind of terms that are going to kind of meld what we're working on now into the CSS that we work on tomorrow. And the first thing I want to talk about are divs and spans. So a div, as it says, is a section of a document that's styled in CSS. Well, that's not even put very well. Let me show you what we could have done. I didn't do this, but a lot of times what you're going to see, I'm going to go back to the form that we created. All right. Where is it? On the other page. It's up here. Now, this form is actually not small. It starts on line 101 with all the states, etc. that are in there. It goes down all the way to 187, so it's 87 lines long. And I'm going to make it longer right now. Why? What am I talking about? Well, typically when you start to style, all right, you come in here and you do something like this. I'm going to create a div, and I'm going to set the ID equal to fname for first name. All right. And I'm going to take all my first name stuff and I'm going to put it in there. Okay, just like that. Okay. Then I'm going to take another div. So I'm going to copy this one. I'll do that. And I'm going to call that one lname for last name. Then I'm going to create another one that I'm going to call address. I mean, pretty obvious, hopefully at least, what I'm starting to do here. Okay. Finish that one off. Have another one that'll be called city. Another one that'll be called state. I don't know what happened there. I screwed it up. So let's grab these two. Another one that will be called, I'll just call it Z code. I'm making sure I'm not using the same names that I used over here. So this one will be called email address. This one will be called, let's just call it cell for the phone number. Oops. This next one here, we'll call it sex. All right. The next one, we'll call it contact. All right. The next one, we'll call it B-Day for birthday. The next one, I'm just going to call my color. And then finally, we'll call these form buttons. Kind of a dumb name, but I'll have that ending div tag. Now my hope is in just a second, when I bring this up, my form's not going to look any different. It'll look exactly the same as it did before. Refresh, and it looks the same. So you might say, whatever, why did you even do that then? Because as it's set up here, a div section is a document that's styled in CSS. So this is the kind of thing that we're going to be doing tomorrow. And that is, if I want to come in here and do some special styling, let's say just for the first name field, now I've got an ID of F name that'll handle all the styling for this, L name to handle all the styling for this, etc. So a div is short for division. It's basically the way that people used to do things. Before the HTML5 semantic tags that I talked about a little bit in the last lecture, before we had those, what most people did to separate different parts of their website was they would create divs. So for instance, up here where we had the, and I guess I didn't even put it in, all right, but where you typically would have, today you would have like a header section up at the top. Let's put one in. And I'm going to put in here, I'll put it in H1 for right now. Don't worry, I know I said you should only have one H1, but you'll understand why later. And I'm going to put down my first web page. All right, then inside of there, I'm going to put in an unordered list, and it's going to have a href equals index.html. We'll say here home. I'm going to pretend I've got 4 pages on my website. This will be about, this will be, we'll say services, and this will be contact. And I'll change these as well. So this will become about. All right, this will become services, and this will become contact. Now, this will change the way my form looked, of course, because I added more text to it. Now, at the top, we've now got this. All right. Normally, what you'd see would be something up here. Come on. You'd see something up here, and then this stuff would be all over here. And that's what we're going to end up doing pretty quick. But the reason I put this up here was to let you know that in the past, not that many years ago, what people would do would be, instead of creating a, we didn't have this semantic header here. That's the way what people use now, but instead they'd put in div ID equals header. And then they would have their ending div tag. So the div was used as a separator. All right, so you could put together things that for whatever reason seem to belong together. That was kind of the rationale behind that. All right, so again, it's not done as much today as that. And let me just tell you one reason it's not used as much today. Divs are not semantic in nature. Now, if we look up, and I'm not trying to waste my time or your time here, but if I go into dictionary.com and I put in the word semantic, it says, let's look and see if we got of related to arising from different meanings of words or other symbols. Well, what they're really getting to here with semantic is we want to make sure that internally the system has some kind of an idea that when I put in something that says header, what header means. And you might say, I don't get it. Well, why is that important? It's important for assistive technology devices. So people who are sight impaired, people who are hearing impaired, people who have got color blindness. Also, by using the semantic tags, you end up writing better sites that end up resonating and rendering better on all devices. So it used to be you'd use divs for stuff like this, but no longer. So when you wanted to separate stuff. Now, I'm going to just give you a quick example. This is the kind of thing we're going to run through tomorrow. So don't worry if it doesn't make any sense. All right, but we've got here div ID equals fname. So you can see that. I'm going to come back up here just so you see it. So this is the kind of stuff that we'll do tomorrow. And I'm going to say ID, which is a hashtag, fname. And I'm going to say for the first name, I want the text to be orange. All right, and I want not text. I want the color to be orange, and I want the background, and you can say background or you can say background color. Let's say we want that to be pink. It's probably going to look god-awful together, but it's just so you get the idea. So now when I come back into here, remove that and refresh. See that? My background has now been made pink, and the actual label itself has been made orange. Now, that's a really, really poor example. But what I want to show you is what we were able to do, or part of the reason that that worked the way it did was the fact that we went in here and we used a div. All right, now, just to show you, so in here, we've got fname. Let's not even do that. That's the div, right? So the div is fname. So fname had what in it? It had both. It had a label in it. All right, so now that should be orange in a pink background. Did that change anything? Notice now the whole thing isn't pink anymore. All right, and let's make that just so you can really amplify what's going on here. I'll say the background color, I'm going to make this purple. All right, then I'm going to say for my first name, and I think I'm giving you the right syntax here, input type equal text. Like I said, if it's the wrong syntax, I'm not trying to, but let's see. Let's reverse that. All right, so I'm going to, instead of having these two the way we've got them, I'm going to reverse them. So I'm going to make the color purple, and I'm going to make the background color orange. All right. Now, it thought it gave me an error before, but let's see. This may not be the right syntax, so we'll look. And it was the right syntax. And notice if I type in here and I type Jeff, that's purple. So why am I even telling you this? What we were able to do by coming in here and setting up in our form here, and that's the only place I put it in really, setting up ID or setting up divs, I was able to partition off what I'm doing. So now this is only my first name stuff. Notice this is the last name. So if I go here and I'm going to copy this, my first name label and my last name label. But I'm going to change this so that the first one, this is first name label and input. Now I'm going to have a last name, label, and input. And I'll use two different colors. So I'll make this, we'll make this pink. And we'll make the background color, I don't know, green. All right, and then we'll flip these two. So again, this will be green, and this will be pink. So again, what you're able to see, taking a look at this, all right, see that? And by breaking stuff into divisions like that, it makes it much easier when we start to actually go in and do our when we go in and we start to do our CSS. Now, something else I want to tell you. Let's see. I want to grab something that makes sense to me. So, all right, where we've got here necessary ingredients. See that? I want the N in necessary and the I in ingredients to be bigger than what they currently are. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. I want this N and this I to be bigger than the rest of the letters. Now, what I could do, I'm not going to do this, but what I could do is I could come in and where we've got that, where is it? Necessary ingredients. I could come in and I could set up, not a div. Well, I could put this whole thing into a div. I guess I could do that. So I could come in here and put in a div. And I could give it an ID. And I'm going to call it big heading. It's a dumb name. You wouldn't use this, but I'm just going to put that in there anyway, just so you see it. All right. And then at the end of this, I'm ending my div. All right, so I've got this thing, this ID called big heading. All right, and now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say big heading. Oops, I don't know what I did there. And I'm going to say that I want the font size to be 32 pixels. And if you say, what did you do? It's much easier to put this in and then show you what I did. See how that got real big? Well, I didn't want all of it to be real big. I only wanted the N and the I to be big, not the rest of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this thing, this font size. I'm going to get rid of it. And as soon as I get rid of it and I go back, it's been changed back. But instead of doing this with a div, I'm going to use a span. All right, so where we've got this necessary ingredients, I'm going to put in here span, style equals font size 32 pixels. And then I'm going to end my span. What did that do? As always, it is much easier to show you. All right, it's much easier to show you. So let's see. I want to end that span there. That's why it's giving me an error. So let's get rid of that. All right. So now I've got my ending span tag. Good. So what happened? See how the N is bigger now? And I'm going to blow it way up so you can really tell the difference. Let's make it double that size, 64 pixels. And there it is. So I said I wanted the N to be bigger and the I. So I'm just going to copy this. And I'll put it right before the I. And I'll tell you what, I'll put them right underneath one another, just so you can see. right? Now when I switch back, notice the N and the I are bigger. So span is an element that's used not to just color, but it's used to work on part of a line. So basically divs are basically meant to work with block level elements, and spans are more meant to work with inline elements. Now that's what I just told you right now is a generalization, but it's a generalization that pretty much holds true. So there's plenty of really good articles out here. And one of the ones that I would recommend, where is it? So a div is a block level element and a span is an inline. Divs should be used to wrap sections of a document, while spans are used to wrap small portions of text, images, etc. Fine. There we go. Next one. Well, I thought I had it. But this is going to lead me into the last lecture that we'll have for this part, and that'll be on IDs and classes. All right, and I just want to mention this site right here. The site is called css-tricks.com, and it's kind of your one-stop place to go for just about any CSS questions you have. Now, you might say, how do I even know if I have CSS questions? I haven't done any yet. That's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. But as a prelude or leading into that, what I am going to do is I am very quickly in the last lecture in this series of lectures that I'm doing in here. So in the last lecture, I'm going to go into the differences between IDs and classes. And that'll again be our prelude into cascading style sheets or CSS.